we were talking about the early medieval age. What had we discussed? क्या क्या हो गया था हमारा? The tripartite struggle we had considered. Then the Arab invasion of Sindh we had covered. Then the Rajput period we had covered. Right? Any doubts before we move ahead? Tomorrow? अच्छा. Okay, अभी रिवाइज नहीं किया है. All right. So अगर बीच में कुछ नहीं समझ में आता है, you can interrupt me and let me know. Raise your hand. I'll come back to you if I'm in the middle of something. ठीक है? Next thing we have to discuss is the Turkish invasion and its impact. First of all, tell me, where do the Turks come from? Turks are natives of Turkey, right? Or Turkmenistan. But these were the regions settled by the Turkish people. Originally, they were not from this. ठीक है? Originally, कहाँ से थे ये लोग? Where were they from? Now, there are certain pockets of the world which are known as the forge of nations. That means this is where new nations are born. Okay? One of those is the region of Scandinavia. कहाँ पे है ये? Northern Europe, right? And the other is the Eurasian steppe. Where do you think the Turks were from? Did they come all the way to India from Northern Europe or from the Central Asian or Eurasian steppe? They were from the Eurasian steppe grasslands. Okay? I believe Eurasian steppe कहाँ पे है? I had told you earlier also. This entire region in the temperate zone, stretching right from Hungary all the way to Manchuria, this is known as the steppe grasslands. Okay? Now, what kind of people generally emerge from here? Are they members of agrarian societies or are they largely pastoral nomads? They are pastoral nomads. So, Turks were one of them. Now, where did Islam first emerge? In the Arabian Peninsula, right? That is in this region. This region of the Arabian Peninsula is known as the Hijaz. Okay? यहाँ पे emerge हुआ, and from here it spread over a vast region covering the whole of North Africa, The southern portion of the Iberian Peninsula, this region is known as Andalusia. The whole of the Arabian Peninsula, Central Asia, Anatolia, Persia, Sindh, and Central Asia. A new power emerged from the 8th century onwards, known as the Islamic Caliphate. And within 100 years, it established its control over this vast region, which we have marked in green, right? Now, coinciding with the establishment of the Islamic Caliphate, another development took place. The Turks, who were originally residents of this portion of the steppe, the Mongolian steppe, they were pushed out of here due to pressure being exerted from the eastward direction. So from there, some tribal hordes of horse rider pastoral nomads, they began pushing them. And as a result, the Turks were displaced. Some went in this direction, some went in this direction, some went in this direction, right? In fact, from the 7th to the 10th century, a number of steppe nomadic ancestries or lineages emerged and began to spread out in all directions. These include the Cumans, the Kipchaks, the Karluks, the Kaimaks, etc. And one of them were the Oghuz Turks. Okay? The Oghuz Turks, they migrated towards the south and came into contact with the growing caliphate. Now, the Turks possessed certain qualities which were very useful for the growing caliphate. What were these? They were excellent horse masters and excellent archers. Okay? These were excellent at archery and horse riding. Did the Turks share the same religion as the people of the Islamic Caliphate? No. They belong to a collection of religiously and ethnically diverse tribes. Okay? When we say the word Turk, we are not referring to a single tribe or a single linguistic group. Rather, these were, single religious group. These were, in fact, a group of horse riders originating from the Eurasian steppe who spoke a common language, and beginning from the 8th and 9th century onwards, after coming into contact with the Islamic world, they adopted Islam largely speaking. Okay? Now, as excellent horse riders and archers, they were very useful militarily. Okay? So, they entered the Islamic Caliphate as soldiers and mercenaries, right? So within the Islamic Caliphate, their main role was the martial profession, okay? Military men. And what would be the position occupied by the leaders of the Turks within the Caliphate? Are they always going to remain underlings, or are they also going to demand an increasing share of power as their influence and importance within the Caliphate grows? They are going to demand more and more power. Okay? So gradually, they rose to power as important military generals and officials within the caliphate. Right? At this point of time, the caliphate itself was undergoing a significant transformation. What were the changes that were taking place? First of all, there was a rising trend of Persianization. Okay? When I say Persianization, we are not simply talking about the rising stature of the Persian language and Persian culture within the caliphate, but also Persian political and administrative conventions. Okay? So, Persian language and culture began gaining importance. In fact, Persian even replaced Arabic as the court language in the caliphate at Baghdad. From Arabic, now Persian became more important. Secondly, the polity became more democratic or less democratic? Less democratic. It became more autocratic. This was against the conventions of kingship established by the Prophet initially, right? He had, in fact, established a political system which had a strong element of democracy within it. Because at that point of time, his empire or his kingdom was rather small in size, and it had incorporated primarily the Bedouin tribal groups living in this region. Therefore, tribal conventions of kingship used to be applied, which are always more democratic, right? Persians, however, had been the founders of the earliest empire known in human history. And for a very long period of time, they had established the conventions of a strong authoritative and monarchical system. This was adopted by the Arabic Islamists. Okay? So it also became more autocratic. Thirdly, the level of prosperity. What is going to happen? That is also going to increase. But is this prosperity going to be experienced by everyone, or is all the wealth going to be concentrated in the hands of a few elites? Few elites. Elites coming from which region? From the region of present day Arabia, right? Or Baghdad and uske wahan pe jo elites hai, they are going to get all the wealth, right? What is going to be the result? Inequality is going to increase. And what will be the outcome of this inequality? Are people in the far-flung regions such as Andalusia or Turkey or Central Asia or Egypt going to remain happy, or are they going to become disenchanted with the caliphate? They are going to become disenchanted. However, by this point of time, even they have adopted these conventions. And thus, another important development is going to take place. An element of fragmentation is going to become visible within the caliphate. Centrifugal forces are going to become stronger. And who are going to be the groups that are leading this process? The original Arabs who had established the caliphate, or new groups who have been kept outside the top circles of power. And among them, the most powerful would be the Turks. Okay? The Turks now began asserting independence. What would be the result? Conflict is going to increase or decrease? Increase. Is this conflict going to be within the Islamic Caliphate or outside it? Within. So, civil war. Became frequent. And whose authority did this kind of civil war within the Islamic world threaten most? That of the caliph. So, the caliph's authority was challenged or threatened. Was this political situation sustainable? No. So something had to give, something had to break. And in order to resolve it, an important administrative innovation was made. Kya? The caliph's authority was delegated. To whom? To his appointed deputies. And who do you think he would choose as his deputies? The Turks, who were his rivals. Okay? So now these deputies were given the title Sultan, which comes from the Arabic word sult, which literally means power. Sultan, the one who exercises power and does so legitimately with the blessing of the caliph. He is not somebody who is challenging the caliph, rather he is the one who is upholding the caliph's rule in his own domain. Okay? Traditionally, position of the caliph in the Islamic world was that he was the supreme political as well as the spiritual leader of something called the Ummah. What do you understand by this term, Ummah? The nation of Islam. That means all the people who observe Islam, all Muslims around the world, they collectively are known as the Ummah. And this tells us something very important about the nature of Islam. Was Islam only a religion, or was it something more? Something more. So Islam from the very beginning was both a religion as well as a political philosophy. Are you familiar with the Abrahamic religions? Three prominent Abrahamic religions. Which ones? Judaism, the oldest, then Christianity after that, and after that, Islam. Founders, Judaism ke, the Prophet Moses. Christianity, Jesus Christ, and Islam, Prophet Muhammad. Right? Out of these, there was only one who was both the founder of a new religion as well as a king. Who was that? The Prophet Muhammad. Neither of the other two prophets were kings, right? And therefore, he established not only a religion but also a state, and also gave a political philosophy on how to govern that state. And it was he who said that after him, he would be replaced by a caliph who would be democratically elected. But now all that was changing because of growing size, growing wealth, increasing competition, etc. New contenders were emerging, and therefore some administrative innovations had to be done in order to preserve the unity of the Ummah and the notional supremacy of the caliph. What was that innovative innovation, administrative innovation? The position of Sultan. Okay? Because why else would the caliph want to dissolve his own power by empowering his own allies? So that would be like dividing your empire into 4 parts without any gains, right? जब कोई conflict नहीं है, तो there is no need for a solution. The need for a solution was that because there was conflict and because civil war was brewing within the caliphate. So it is better to preserve the overall structure of the state, even though the caliph would have to make certain personal sacrifices. Okay? So that is the idea over here. Now, as a result, in different parts of the world, several Turkish sultanates emerged with the caliph's approval. These include the Seljuk Sultanate, also known as the Sultanate of Rome or Rome, where in modern Turkey, Asia wala Turkey, that is known as Anatolia. The Mamluk Sultanate. The word Mamluk literally means slave in Turkish. Where? In Egypt. And the Ghaznavid Sultanate. Where? In Afghanistan. So on the map, they would emerge here, here, and in the Nile Valley. Okay? That would be the Seljuk Sultanate of Rome, this would be the Ghaznavid Sultanate of Afghanistan, and that would be the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. Out of these, who do you think would be the most likely to begin invading India? The Ghaznavids, because they were located the most close by. Now, this development had started in the 9th century and went on till the 10th century. And during the 10th century, The Ghaznavid Turks began invading India. What was happening meanwhile in India? The three most important powers were breaking up at this point of time and being replaced by small warring regional principalities ruled by Rajputs. Okay? The small Rajput states were busy doing what? Fighting each other, thus clearing the way for these Turkish invaders. From the mid 10th century, India was repeatedly invaded by different sultans from Ghazni. These included Alaptgin, Subuktgin, and Mahmud of Ghazni. Okay. Among them, the most prolific invader was Mahmud of Ghazni. Ghazni was actually the name of his capital. That is why Mahmud of Ghazni or Mahmud Ghaznavi. Okay. We know about Mahmud of Ghazni primarily from the accounts left behind by Firdausi in the form of a long Persian epic known as the Shahnama. Right? Shahnama ka literal meaning, the story of kings. Okay? Now, Firdausi is considered to be the grandfather of modern Persian. Okay? This was the seminal work of Persian poetry and it elevated the Persian language to the status of a classical language. This work contains the stories, legends, and accounts of the victories of great Persian kings, both real as well as imagined. So you can think of it like a work resembling Mahabharat along with a historical work. Okay? So it was that kind of a work. Now, Firdausi was patronized by Mahmud of Ghazni and has thus included a qasida in praise of his patron. So it contains, the Shahnama contains a qasida of Mahmud of Ghazni. What is a qasida? A eulogy, right? A praiseworthy account written in favor of somebody who is still living. And if it is written by someone who is already dead, it is known as marsiya. Okay? So this was a qasida for Mahmud of Ghazni. It talks about the important cultural contributions as well as military victories of Mahmud of Ghazni. Okay? The next and probably most important source was the Kitabul Hind, also known as the Tawarikh-e Hind, also known as the Tehkeek-e Hind, written by Abu Rehan al-Biruni. Simply al-Biruni also. Okay? Who was al-Biruni? He was a polymath. Polymath is somebody who has expertise over various fields. From the region of Khwarizm, this is in Central Asia, who entered the service of Mahmud of Ghazni as a young man. Okay? He was an expert in theology, that is the study of religion, philosophy, mathematics, astronomy, alchemy or Rasayan Shastra. This is considered to be the precursor of modern chemistry. Medicine and linguistics. So he did not simply have passing knowledge on these subjects, he was an expert in all of them. And during one of Mahmud's raids into India, he accompanied the ruler. But after arriving in India, did he go on to wage war or did he go to study? He studied. He parted ways upon arrival and traveled to what at that point was the most important educational center in the whole of North India, that is Varanasi. He stayed there for 2 years and learned how to write and speak Sanskrit. He consulted various learned scholars, and read numerous Sanskrit religious and academic works. And on the basis of this knowledge, he has given an account of 11th century India. What are the things that he has talked about? Indian society, Indian culture, Indian religion, education, architecture, Indian climate, and geography. What does he not talk about? Polity. Okay? Doesn't talk about polity. Okay? Now, the Kitabul Hind is unique in the Indian context. Why? Because it is the earliest work of its kind ever composed about India. Okay? How come? It was the first scientifically written historical text or historical work ever in India. What do we mean that when we say scientifically written historical text? It is a work of pure academics. There is no religious angle over here. Okay? It is free from mythology and religious bias. Further, the observations that Al-Biruni makes, he has critically analyzed them. It is based on critical assessment. So there is application of the critical mind in Al-Biruni's observations. He does not simply take whatever is written in the Sanskrit texts at face value. He analyzes them with the use of logic and also compares Indian knowledge, Indian learning and culture with other cultures such as the culture of Islam as well as the European culture. So it also provides a comparative analysis between India and other civilizations. Okay. Further, since Al-Biruni's main area of interest was academics, he was simply trying to learn about India, create the true picture of India. Therefore, in India, he was working as a curator of a museum. He was picking important aspects of Indian culture and preserving them for his native audience in the Islamic world. So he had a curatorial approach to scholarship. While at times he is critical of Indian religion and Brahmanical values, he is not coming from a place of religious hatred. Rather, he comes from a place of philosophical curiosity. So his work is philosophically inquisitive and not based on religious prejudice or hatred. In fact, he displays quite a humanistic approach while talking about the condition of the underprivileged classes in India, and at times also criticizes similar practices in the Islamic world. Okay? So he has a humanist approach. Towards the accumulation of facts and its reporting. And that is why it is unique in Indian history writing. In fact, there are many people who believe, many scholars who believe that in India, this was the first true work of history, and it is from this point onwards that we can say that the tradition of historiography or history writing began in India. The task taken up by Kitabul Hind would be continued further by Indian scholars. The foremost among them, the earliest among them would be Kalhana of Kashmir, who wrote the Raj Tarangini in the mid 12th century CE. So the earliest work of true history by an Indian was the Raj Tarangini of Kalhana, which he completed in the year 1148 CE. It is a history of the kings of Kashmir, the queens of Kashmir, and their deeds. Now, while the Raj Tarangini of Kalhana has the same qualities as the Kitabul Hind of Al-Biruni, we cannot say for sure whether Kalhana was actually aware of this work. In fact, likelihood is that he was not. But this kind of scholarship has a way of traveling among academic circles. Maybe somebody who had come into contact with Al-Biruni was one of the teachers of Kalhana, or Kalhana knew about him through second or third degree association. So the conventions used by Al-Biruni were definitely present in Raj Tarangini of Kalhana. But we cannot say for sure whether Kalhana was definitely aware about Al-Biruni's works. Nowhere has he mentioned it. Itna clear hai yahan tak? Now, Al-Biruni's work on India is considered so authoritative that modern historians consider it to be a true mirror of 11th century Indian society. So the Kitabul Hind is considered to be a mirror of 11th century Indian society. What were the important observations that Al-Biruni gave? First of all, that India's society was caste-ridden. He mentions the presence of 4 varnas and 8 antyaj castes. That is, untouchables. So he has given evidence of the practice of untouchability in Indian society. He also says that there is high economic inequality. All the wealth is concentrated in the hands of Kshatriyas, Brahmins, and temples, while the commoners live in extreme poverty. So he mentions that the Kshatriyas and Brahmins together constitute the elite class. The word that he uses for it is Hawas or Khas. Okay? Commoners, that is Vaishyas, Shudras, and the Antyaj, he calls them Aam Aadmi or the Awam. Hawas are extremely wealthy, while the Awam lives in extreme poverty. Clear? He also says that the religious beliefs and practices of the Awam and Hawas are different. He says that the common people engage in illogical practices such as idol worship, However, the Hawas, who he says are familiar with the true nature of God, they practice monotheism. Okay? And who does he give the blame for the practice of idol worship among the common people to? To the common people themselves or to the elites? To the elites. क्या बोलता है? While these people are aware of the truth, they knowingly hide it from the common people instead of spreading it. Okay? He blames the elites for the superstitions and ignorance of the commoners. नहीं, monotheism is worship of a supreme God who is formless. ठीक है? So he has no shape, no sex, no age, no gender, no name. So केवल है, he is the creator. You cannot see him, but he is always there. He is all knowing, all seeing, all powerful. Further, he says that Indians are extremely learned, but at the same time, they are also equally conceited. Okay? Meaning that they suffer from a superiority complex. Indians believe that their land is the best land, their kings are the best kings, their knowledge is the best knowledge, their language is the best language, and their religion is the best religion. तो बाहर से कुछ लेने की जरूरत है नहीं. And thus they reject all new knowledge. Right? And why do they do this? Firstly, because they suffer from a superiority complex, and secondly, because they consider outsiders to be impure. Al-Biruni mentions that the terms used by Indians for foreigners include Malaysia and Turushka. Both of which have negative connotations, both of which are derogatory terms. Meaning impure. And why do Indians consider outsiders to be impure? For that, he blames the invasions of the Turkish invaders, right? He says that Indians are still trying to recover from the trauma of the early Islamic invasions, which resulted in massacre of the Indian people, looting, and also destruction of temples. So for this, he blames foreign invasions. ठीक है? At the same time, he also says that while the level of Indian knowledge is high, it is stagnating because Indians have stopped accepting new knowledge from other sources. But Indians of the earlier generations were not so narrow-minded. They used to welcome new knowledge from all sources. Okay? He says that Indian religion philosophy and science is a confounding mix of rotten dates mixed with pearls. Okay? Meaning that at times we have extremely high level of learning and scholarship which shines through, but at the same time we have certain illogical notions and superstitions which are intertwined into pure science or philosophy or religion in such a manner that they become indistinguishable. And who does he blame for this? The scholars. Con? The Brahmins. He blames Brahmins for this and says that while Brahmins are familiar with the true nature of knowledge, they try not, or they act as insulators of knowledge. They are the ones, in fact, who are to be blamed for the ignorance of the common masses, and they are the ones who push forward their superstitions and illogical notions. Okay? He calls them insulators of knowledge. Okay? And he also tells us why Brahmins do this. Kya bolta hai? Why do Brahmins jealously guard the knowledge that they have? Because it is the key to their success and status in society. If this knowledge was to be equally or distributed, widely distributed, then Brahmins would have nothing to set themselves apart. Okay? That is the explanation he gives. Regarding the condition of women, what are Al-Biruni's views? Condition of women in India is good? No, it is extremely poor, with women being subjected to multiple evils, such as child marriage, parda, or the custom of veiling, the denial of education and inheritance, the practice of or the prohibition of widow remarriage, the practice of polygamy, he said, was widespread among the elites. He reports the widespread practice of sati and also the emergence of a new social evil, that is जौहर, ठीक है. About the Varna hierarchy, he informs us that Brahmins enjoyed the supreme position in society. They were involved in scholarship and priestly pursuits. They were lavished with various gifts and rich donations. The Kshatriyas, according to him, had exclusive right to rule and exclusive right to bear arms. So only Kshatriyas could become part of the military. About the Vaishyas, he says that their position had declined. And about Shudras, he says that their position had improved. Okay? Such that the condition of Vaishyas was equivalent to that of the Shudras. Both of them were engaged in the same task, that is agriculture. And they also lived together. Reason for the decline of the position of Vaishyas: decline of trade and craft production. Reason for the improvement in the position of Shudras: increasing importance of agriculture. He further informs us that even if a Brahmin commits a capital offense, he cannot be awarded the death penalty. Okay? So they were immune to the death penalty. Right? About Indian architecture, he says that Indian temples are huge and heavily ornamented, but at the same time he says that they lack the symmetry and simplicity of Islamic architecture. Further, he says about tanks and stepped wells. That Indian skill in this field is unmatched. that he was forced to wonder whether his eyes were bluffing him when he saw a water tank constructed by Indian artisans for the first time. About India's geography, he mentions the presence of mountains, great rivers, fertile plains, arid deserts, long coasts, and two seas. Okay? So he appears to be familiar with the contours of Indian geography. However, he mentions the names of places which he probably never visited. He talks about, for example, the mountains and valleys of Kashmir. He talks about Sri Lanka and even about Southeast Asia and Indonesia. While talking about India's geography, he has taken a very scientific approach to the study of Indian geography. For example, in one place, he claims that since he found some marine fossils in the mountains of India, हिमालयाज के आसपास कहीं ओशन है? नहीं. So how did these marine fossils get here? He makes the claim that at one point they were submerged under the sea. And surprisingly, in this regard, he was quite accurate also, right? अभी जब आपका geography होगा, you will come across the theory of the Tethys Sea and its subduction under the Indian and Eurasian plates when the Indian plate collided with the Eurasian plate, right? So that was the process which was responsible for the formation of the Himalayas. Now, whether he actually discovered these fossils or whether this is derivative knowledge or not, we cannot say for sure, but he has made this observation, meaning that he had a scientific approach to the study of geography. Next, likho. Indian climate. He says that he experienced 6 seasons while in India. He says that on the whole, Indian climate is hotter and wetter as compared to the climate of Central Asia, and it is ideal for agriculture. He also says that the climate of India is also responsible for its diverse vegetation as well as culture. Okay? So these are the things that Al-Biruni has said about India and Indians. This is a brief overview. However, recently Al-Biruni's account has come under question of how objective it actually was, how accurate it actually was, and to what degree could modern historians use his analysis to recreate 11th century India. Okay? So what were the limitations of Al-Biruni's account? Bataiye. First of all, he himself admits that there was a big language barrier. He says that Sanskrit was very different from Persian or Arabic, and he had great difficulty in grasping concepts that were being related to him through the text that he was coming across and also the conversations that he was having with the Indian scholars. Second problem, what kind of a work is it? Did he actually go among the common people to write about them, or did he learn all the things about the common people from priests? Learned it from the priests, from the Sanskrit texts. Therefore, Al-Biruni's assessment also suffers from a distinct Brahmanical or elite bias. Thirdly, since it was an academic work and not based on the personal observations and experiences of Al-Biruni himself, it has the quality of a normative text, which reflects an idealized situation instead of the ground reality. Fourthly, और क्या problem है? It is silent on polity. Fifthly, it also misses some important observations. For example, while talking about the different communities living in different parts of India, while he has mentioned the Kshatriya Varn, nowhere does he mention the word Rajput. So he appears not to be familiar with it at all. Okay? Missed important details. For example, Rajputs are not mentioned. Further, while trying to relate philosophical knowledge of Indians in Arabic, he also makes some presuppositions and assumptions which are incorrect, and that is because of the fundamental differences between Islamic and Indian philosophy. So he was not able to bridge the gap between the two accurately. Okay? Mistakes in interpreting Indian philosophy. For example, while talking about the concept of salvation, he misinterprets it as paradise or heaven or Jannat. Whereas in Orthodox Indian philosophy, there is no such concept of heaven or hell. Paradise, Jannat, ये सब कुछ नहीं है. Dozak, Nark, ये सब nothing like that exists. ठीक है? So these are some of the limitations. Take down a question. The Kitabul Hind is rightly considered to be the single most authoritative text to learn about India during the Rajput age. Critically analyze. $200 words, 15 marks. Will you be able to address this? हो जाएगा? How are you going to begin? Short introduction of Al-Biruni, his field of expertise and his association with Mahmud of Ghazni. Then about the Kitabul Hind, what are its positive qualities? How does it stand apart from the traditional Indian scholarship? How it objectively interprets Indian society, religion, customs, culture, and its people, geography, climate, etc. इस सब के बारे में encyclopedic knowledge देता है. And then you will come to the limitations, shortcomings, and conclusion. While its importance cannot be underestimated, it should also not be overestimated. The old historical notions regarding its authoritativeness have rightly been challenged owing to the limitations. And according to Al-Biruni himself, he himself admits that he faced several problems in writing these works. So those should be kept in mind, and it should be treated like any other work of history and must be objectively analyzed by modern historians. ठीक है? ये हो गया Al-Biruni. Now we were talking about Mahmud of Ghazni, है ना? तो Mahmud of Ghazni, हाँ, according to the contemporary sources, how many times he invaded India? 17 times. First invasion against Jaipal of the Shahi dynasty, which was ruling over northern Punjab and southeastern Afghanistan. The area that is now known as Pashtunistan or Pakhtunistan, वहां पे ये रूल करते थे. What was the outcome? Jaipal was defeated and he committed suicide by burning himself alive. ठीक है? His most famous invasion, Somnath. When? 1025 CE. ठीक है? His imperial title, Buth Shikan. Buth means idol and Shikan is to break. That means the breaker of idols. Which idols are we talking about? Idols of deities in Indian temples, right? So why do you think he adopted this title Butt Chicken? Because he wanted to gain legitimacy in the eyes of his people who considered idol worship to be against the precepts of God. Okay? So this was his claim to legitimacy. Further, he was also asking his people to go on long and dangerous campaigns in which they could lose their lives. So how to mobilize them? Link it with religious fervor. Okay? So he said that we are going to perform a religious task when we destroy the Indian temples as well as their idols. And if you are with me, the doors of heaven are going to open to you directly if you attain martyrdom during these raids. Okay? So it was also a tool of military mobilization. All right. Now, was Mahmud of Ghazni actually interested in spreading Islam in India? No. How can we say this? Did he construct any mosques in India? Did he construct any madrasas? Did he convert anyone forcibly? No. So he was not interested in establishing his rule in India or spreading Islam. What was the objective of these raids? To loot the fabulous temple wealth. Why? Because he wanted to use this wealth to fund his other wars in Central Asia. Okay? So, the real objective was to loot the temple wealth to fund other wars. Now, with the death of Mahmud of Ghazni in 1030 CE, India experienced a long period of peace on the external front. For about 150 years or so, there were no foreign invasions from the northwest. Okay? After the death of Mahmud of Ghazni, India experienced a period of external peace as for almost 150 years. There were no further invasions from the northwest. So Ghazni या फिर अफगानिस्तान वाले region से Turks के invasion for 1.5 centuries they are going to stop. Okay? The second wave of Turkish invasions are going to come under Muhammad Ghori, also known as Muhammad bin Sam, also known as शहाबुद्दीन घोरी. बंदा एक ही है, नाम 3 अलग अलग. ठीक है. Who was he? He was the co-ruler of the powerful Ghur Sultanate right? That means he was not the sole sultan, sole sovereign. He was co-ruler. The Ghur Sultanate was actually established by his elder brother, that is Ghiyas al-Din Ghori. In 1163 CE, and he continued to rule for 40 years till 1203 before he died. So he was one sultan, and Muhammad Ghori became the co-sultan in 1173. Clear? Now, by this point of time, the Ghaznavid Empire had declined and it had been replaced by two powerful kingdoms. So, number one, the Ghurid Empire. Number two, the Khwarezmian Empire. Ghurid Empire ruling over Afghanistan and Punjab, and Khwarezmian Empire over parts of Persia and a major chunk of Central Asia. Right? They were neighbors and thus natural rivals. Their relationship was defined by constant warfare for supremacy. Now, which of these powers was in a stronger position? The Ghurid Empire or the Khwarezmian Empire? It was the Khwarezmian Empire that was in a stronger position. Why? Because of its location. First of all, it had control over the Silk Route connecting it to China. It also had access to a long coastline which could offer connectivity to other parts of the world. It also had large tracts of fertile land which generated a large amount of revenue. The Ghurid Empire was a landlocked empire in mostly mountainous and arid terrain. Therefore, it lacked these economic advantages. Right? Now, how could the Ghurid rulers balance the scales? By getting a new source of wealth. And what was the most readily available source of wealth for them? India. Right? So, once again, Muhammad Ghori looked towards India to secure Ghur against Khwarazm. ठीक है? In 1178, he planned his first invasion into India. What was the target? Once again, Somnath, गुजरात. ठीक है? हाँ. No, the conflict had been going on ever since the establishment of the Ghurid Empire, right? It was only when the Khwarezmians started to gain an advantage over the kingdom of Ghur that he was forced to look towards India. The route that he picked to the Bolan Pass, कहाँ पे है ये? In the Kirthar mountains of Balochistan. What was the result? Success or defeat? Defeat. He was repelled by the powerful ruler of Gujarat, that is Bhima the Second. Of which dynasty? Solanki dynasty. ठीक है? Now, one of the ancestors of Bhima the Second, his name coincidentally was also Bhima, was actually the one who was facing Mahmud of Ghazni when he had invaded Somnath. He had attacked Somnath. What had Bhima the First done? Had he offered resistance or run away? He had run away. However, Bhima the Second stood strong and repelled the invader. Okay? So the first invasion was unsuccessful and he had to return empty-handed. However, now he adopted a new strategy. Seeing that Solanki power could not be easily dislodged in Gujarat and Sindh, he decided to invade through Punjab, which he had avoided doing till now. Why? Because in Punjab, his rule was not consolidated. In fact, Punjab was largely under the control of the remnants of the old Ghaznavid Empire. Right? The new strategy was to first control Punjab and then expand eastwards. By 1190, Punjab was under his control. However, at this point of time, a remarkable development was also taking place in North India. What was that? Prithviraj Chauhan III, the ruler of Ajmer, had established a strong Rajput coalition by subduing the Gahadwals, Parmars and Chandelas. So he in fact had effectively established a kind of a loose empire by conquering the regions of UP as well as Malwa and northern MP. Okay? So while the Gahadwal rulers, Parmar rulers, and Chandela rulers were not removed from position, they were transformed into his underlings. Right? Now, he had two options, whether to expand towards the west or towards the south. Towards the south, kaun tha? Bhima II, right? Extremely powerful ruler, would be difficult to defeat. Therefore, he decided to expand towards the west. His target was Tabarhin, that is present day Bhatinda, which would give him a good launch pad to expand further westwards. At the same time, another ruler was eyeing the same location. Kaun? Muhammad Ghori. Therefore, conflict between the two was inevitable. 1191, a famous battle takes place. Kaun sa? The first battle of Karen. Who wins? Prithviraj Chauhan III emerges victorious and Muhammad Ghori is forced to retreat. However, this victory did not last very long. 1192, the very next year, Ghori comes once again and the second battle of Tarain is fought. And over here, Prithviraj Chauhan III is defeated. Following this, Ghori marches to Ajmer and Delhi and captures both. Okay. Delhi was in fact ruled by one of the vassals, one of the feudals of Prithviraj Chauhan III. He was a member of the Tomar dynasty, right? The Tomar fort at Delhi is destroyed and a new city known as Lalkot is established by Muhammad Ghori and his followers. Sometime later, Prithviraj Chauhan, who had been reduced to the status of a vassal of Muhammad Ghori, he rebels once again and is quickly defeated and executed. Okay? However, there are very romantic, you can say, stories about the death of Prithviraj Chauhan. Uska ek bard tha. His name was Chandrabardhai. He wrote a series of poems which were later compiled into a work known as the Prithviraj Raso. Right? It talks about the great achievements of Prithviraj Chauhan III. What are the themes that are covered? First of all, his love story with his wife, Sanyogita, who was in fact a princess of the Gahadwal dynasty. Her father did not want her to get married to Prithviraj Chauhan III, but during the Swayamvar, it is him that she picks and he elopes with her. He runs away with her. Ek achievement ye. Then secondly, he tells us that he defeats Muhammad Ghori in the first battle of Tarain, but showing mercy to the defeated enemy, he lets him go. The second battle of Tarain, he is betrayed by the father of Sanyogita. Kya naam tha? Jayachandra, right? And because of that, he loses. He is made a prisoner, taken in chains from here to the Gur to the capital of Muhammad Ghori, that is Gur. Over there, he is blinded, but somebody tells him that tells the Sultan that he is a great archer. So before being finally executed, one final show of skill he is asked to perform. And Chandra Bardai is over there narrating all these things, and he is standing over there. Kya hota hai? He gives a description of where exactly the Sultan is sitting, and suddenly Prithviraj Chauhan III turns his arrow and shoots at the Sultan, thus killing him on the spot. After that, he is killed and buried over there. Right? I don't know how, but Chandra Bardai somehow makes it back all the way to India to tell us this great story. But जो real story है, that is a little bit different. Okay? हाँ, तोमर फ्यूडिटरीज बने नहीं थे, तोमर ऑलरेडी चौहान के फ्यूडिटरीज थे. इन द सेकंड बैटल ऑफ तरेन, Tomars were fighting on the side of Prithviraj Chauhan against Muhammad Ghori. So when Prithviraj Chauhan was defeated, Tomars were also defeated simultaneously. Following this, both Ajmer, which was the capital of the Chauhans, as well as Delhi, fell into the control of Muhammad Ghori. Muhammad Ghori ने जो Tomars का किला था in Delhi, that was destroyed by him, and over there a new city known as Lalkot was established. ठीक है. हाँ, तो पृथ्वीराज चौहान was transformed into an underling after the defeat. A peace treaty must have been signed, some tribute must have been paid, and Prithviraj Chauhan was restored to the throne at Ajmer. But following that, he rebelled again, and that is why he was executed. That is what the Turkish or Persian sources say about this. Chandra Bardai says something entirely different. Now, what does the establishment of a new city at Delhi tell us about the ambitions of Muhammad Ghori? Was he simply going to be satisfied by looting India's temple wealth? No, he wanted to establish his rule over North India. Okay? So, unlike Ghazni, Ghori was interested in establishing his rule over India. ठीक है? So, following his victory over Prithviraj Chauhan, he would now have to uproot other Rajput rulers also. So, another famous battle was fought in 1194, known as the Battle of Chandavar, in which Ghori defeated Jayachandra of the Gahadwal dynasty. And established his control over the capital of Kannauj. Okay. However, he could not personally oversee the completion of his eastward march, since he was called back to Gur due to Khwarezmian aggression once again. And the further conquest of the east were carried out by Ikhtiaruddin Muhammad bin Bakhtiyar Khilji. Right? ये तीन चार अलग अलग लोगों का नाम नहीं है. It is only one person. Right? Also colloquially known popularly as Bakhtiyar Khilji. Within a period of 10 months, he defeated the Chandelas as well as the Kalachuris, along with the Senas. Chandelas कहाँ पे? Northern MP, Kalachuris Eastern MP and Chhattisgarh, and Senas in Bihar and Bengal. And thus, Turkish rule was established over the whole of North India, from Sindh to Bengal, with the exception of Gujarat and Malwa. ठीक है? Now, from 1194 to 1206, Muhammad Ghori primarily remained involved in the conflict against the Khwarezmians, and especially after the death of his elder brother Ghiyasuddin Ghori, he became the sole sovereign, and therefore, from towards the end of his reign, Ghori remained preoccupied with the Khwarezmians. So he did not have the time to oversee his huge empire, and therefore he appointed 3 of his capital slaves or Mamluks as his governors. कौन थे ये? Kutubuddin Aibak as the governor of Lahore, Tajuddin Yildiz as the governor of Ghur, and Nasiruddin Kubacha as the governor of Sindh, with his seat at Multan. Okay? Now, Muhammad Ghori was assassinated in 1206. He did not leave behind any male heir, and therefore there was nobody to succeed him. What is going to take place now? Is his empire going to remain intact, or is it going to break apart? It will break apart. Who are going to be the main contenders? These 3 governors. Okay? Kutubuddin Aibak, Tajuddin Yildiz, and Nasiruddin Kubacha. He was on the battlefront primarily. No, Ghur was not the capital. कैपिटल का नाम कुछ और था, आई थिंक एफ से कुछ था, एक बार देखना पड़ेगा, विकिपीडिया पे सर्च करोगे तो मिल जाएगा. बट ही वाज द गवर्नर ऑफ सेंट्रल अफगानिस्तान, दैट इज घूर. यल्दोज था ये. देन कुबाचा इन सिंध एंड ऐबक इन लाहौर, राइट. घूर वाज नॉट द इंपीरियल कैपिटल, घोरी वाज रूलिंग फ्रॉम द इंपीरियल कैपिटल. कैपिटल का नाम आई एम नॉट एबल टू रिकॉल राइट. And what is going to happen in this conflict? Kutubuddin Aibak and his successors prevented the others from incorporating North India under their influence. And with this, a new and independent Sultanate was established. Initially, its capital was Lahore, but was shifted to Delhi by Iltutmish, known as the Delhi Sultanate. And this marked the beginning of independent Turkish rule in North India. The Delhi Sultanate emerged in 1206 with the death of Ghori and would last till 1526, till the first battle of Panipat, when it would fall to the Mughals under Babur. A total of 5 dynasties would rule over it, beginning with the Mamluk dynasty, also known as the Ilbari dynasty. Some people mistakenly also refer to it as the slave dynasty. Okay? But slave in the Islamic world was, they were of different varieties, right? Some would be the ordinary slaves. They were referred to as ghulams. Okay? They would be used for household chores, etc. Mamluks, on the other hand, were capital slaves owned by the Sultan or the top officials of the Sultan. Okay? They were groomed for command from a very early age. They were given the best education, best military training, best strategic training, etc. Right? And when they gained more and more experience, they were promoted within the administrative hierarchy, military hierarchy, so that in the future they could replace their predecessors. Okay? So they were quite different from the normal slaves or ghulams. That is why avoid using the term slave dynasty to refer to this group of rulers. Time period 1206 to 1290. They were followed by the Khilji dynasty. It was a relatively short-lived dynasty, 1290 to 1320, but it had a major impact on the Delhi Sultanate as a whole. So extremely consequential. They were followed by the Tughlaq dynasty from 1320 to 1414. They were followed by another short-lived dynasty, that is the Sayyid dynasty, 1414 to 1457. And finally, the Lodi dynasty, 1457 to 1526. Founders of these dynasties: Kutubuddin Aibak laid the foundations of the Mamluk dynasty. Khilji dynasty: Jalaluddin Khilji. Tughlaq dynasty: Ghiyasuddin Tughlaq. Sayyid dynasty: Hizr Khan. Lodi dynasty: Bahlol Lodi. Is it clear? Right. Now we are going to be looking at the important kings of these dynasties and their contributions separately. But before we do that, we also need to assess the impact of Turkish rule in India. After Ghoris की तो बहुत बाद में, right? So 1290 से 1320. Now, the establishment of Turkish rule induced significant changes in the different systems of polity, economy, military, culture, etc. Right? And thus, we'll need to assess this impact through the political change, military change, economic change, and socio-cultural change. Right? Talking about the political change, what are the things that we should be familiar with? First of all, the position of the Sultan and the degree of centralization. Secondly, we should be familiar with the Iqta system and its evolution. Thirdly, the nature of provincial administration and how the different sultans organize their central government. Right? Now, one important development in the political field that took place was that with the establishment of Turkish rule, political unity was established in North India after a very long period. All these small ruling Rajput principalities were uprooted, and the entire area of conquest from Sindh to Bengal came under the rule of a single power, that is the Sultan at Delhi. It also dealt a death blow to feudalism. Feudalism would decline as the old feudal elements would also be uprooted and revenue would be centralized. The countryside would be invested with heavily armed and numerous soldiers, right? Especially horse troops. अलग-अलग जगहों पर नए-नए garrisons बना दिए जाएंगे. Horse troop garrison towns are going to emerge, and using them, the countryside is going to be pacified. However, we also find that the political situation in Delhi and in the provinces was never stable. It was always in a state of constant flux. So political upheavals are going to be frequent, and as a result, the state structure will never be able to obtain a degree of permanence that is required to provide stability. Things are always going to continue changing, and as a result, the governance machinery and the administrative systems, their institutions and the power structure is going to witness constant evolution also. And this evolution is going to be visible in both centralization, the ICTA system, administration, as well as provincial administration, as well as central administration. Okay. So first of all, let us talk about the